Hello and welcome back to GoodKnitKisses. I'm your host Kristen, and today we're going to look at the flat herringbone stitch. I've got it on the needles right now, but today we're going to show you how to make it on the loom. Let's get started. Okay, you're going to have your loom of choice, your yarn of choice. You're going to want to use a bigger gauge loom than you would use for your yarn regularly, because it's going to bulk up on you. It's going to be a thicker fabric. You can see what the reverse of this one's like. So it does these like kind of funky sideways ridges, which might be cool if you wanted to do it in the reverse. But that's what it looks like. It's flat on the front. And on here, I've already done another row, so at the very end of the video, I'll show you actually how you can cast on to get this. But let's just say you did a double E-wrap cast on to get this way, or what I actually did was a cable cast on, because you want to do it all in one direction counterclockwise. And so we start with our working yarn on the right here, and we're going to work our way back this way. Now technically on the needles this is knit two together, and then we're going to slip the first stitch only. So in order to do that, we're actually going to, in order to knit these two together, I'm going to show you a trick. So I'm going to knit the stitch and then put this one on top, put the one on the two, and knit the bottom one. And so it's technically that's knit together. And then let's move the second one back to the first, and then we're going to grab this stitch that was slipped. We're actually picking it back up. So technically, let me grab all this yarn. Technically, the first one was slipped, because all these on this row are going to get knit twice, except for this very first one. So now I've done this set. Now I'm going to do this set here. So 1 and 2 was one set, and then 2 and 3 is the next one. See, this is where the second stitch starts getting knit again. So we're going to repeat. We're going to knit peg 2, move it over to peg 3, which actually gets you a knit 2 together. Okay, and now go ahead and move 3 to 2. And then you're going to pick the previous stitch up from 3 and put it back on 3. Okay, so now we've technically knit this peg 2 twice. All right, so now we're going to knit this stitch 3 here, move it to 4, knit that over. Okay, so that's technically that's knit 2 together. And now we're going to move that to peg 4, pick up the stitch from 5. Okay, so now we're going to knit the stitch, peg 5, and move it to peg 6, and knit that over, move 6 to 5, and then pick up the previous stitch. Okay, and then now we're going to knit these two together. Do the same thing, moving that stitch back over, fill the empty one up with the previous loose stitch right behind it. Okay, and then that way you can slip that first stitch without actually doing anything else. So just keep moving down the row. I've done 10, I did 12 on here, casted on 12, so that I didn't have to show that many stitches to you, but you could get a good feel of what was going on. So I'll go ahead and finish out this row. Okay. And then we're going to knit the stitch. Work it. And move it, and pick the previous stitch up. Okay. And keep working your way down the loom. Okay, now we're coming to the last 2 stitches here. I'm going to do as I have been, knit these 2 together, okay, and then move this over. All right, now that very last stitch that's loose right here is still going to move all the way over, and then you need to complete the very last part, which is knit 1. So knit the last stitch one more time. Okay, so now you've got this whole row 1 completed. Now we're going to work our way back, and the instructions for needle knitting in the round, which works for a flat panel in loom knitting, is to knit through the back loop. But in loom knitting, we call that E-wrap. So this is going to be easy for people who know E-wrap. So you're just going to wrap it around, and you're going to E-wrap this stitch and move it over. And work the stitch. All right, and then you just move it back and do the same thing that you did before. We're going to pick up this previous stitch here, the one closest to your loop, put it back on the peg, and come around the back and E-wrap. Move it over, work the stitch. You're not wrapping it, you're just working that stitch over because you're knitting 2 together when you're E-wrapping 2 together. Again, pull on that previous stitch, come back and do the wrapping again. Okay. Pick that previous stitch up, go ahead and knit it. Move this over. All right, we are moving along. Okay, so if you want to keep on working your rows, and why don't we meet back up after we get a few inches coming out of our knitting. Okay, so pause your video and make your stitches, and we'll come back. Okay, I got to the end of my row. I'm stopping you before you move on too far. And I had 2 stitches here. I knit them together, and now I need to pick up that previous stitch and put it back on. I didn't get to mention to you, so I'm still on that E-wrap row, or knit through the back loop. You want to go ahead and just, you can E-wrap it or you can knit it. Technically, you're supposed to just knit it and not actually do an E-wrap here. So let's go ahead and just knit that stitch over. And then, so that completes row 2. And then now we're just going to go back to doing the knit again. So again, you're going to repeat this. So it's a 2-row repeat, and we will continue this 2-row repeat where you're knitting the first way and then you're doing an E-wrap on the way back. Okay, so again, this is how I'm starting the beginning. I'm knitting the 2 together, moving it over to the first, and then picking up that previous stitch. And then once I do that, I'm going to knit this stitch and move it over, and knit this one to work on, we'll work it, and then move this back over, and then we're going to pick up our previous stitch. Okay, so this is a repeat of the row 1. Okay, so you're just going to continue knitting this way until you get the length that you want. If you want to pause your video and come back, I'll have a few more rows knitted so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so you can see my knitting on my needles, and then you can also see it on the loom. And this is after we left off. I actually knitted 4 more rows, which is 2 more stitch repeats. So you can see that every time you get this zigzag effect. And you see how the stitches are very much pulled towards the beginning of the knitting on the needles, but as you get further away, it really cinches up right here. So it's actually pretty dense fabric. And then on the back, it's going to have this like ridge line here, which is the same as on the needles. So I hope that's helped you. Let me just show you one more tip before we go. And you could just bind it off as normal when you're finishing. But whenever you're knitting and you're going in the row and say we're going this way again, we're going to knit together, knit two together. Just always remember that when you move this first stitch over, you're always proceeding in the direction of that row. So you move the stitch in the direction of the row. So I'm knitting that one over, and then of course you move this back, but when you put this other slip stitch back on, that's in the direction of the row. So let me do that one more time. So we're gonna knit this one. This is a U knit stitch here, if you're not familiar with that. You can hold it in the front for a flat, but that's okay. So we're picking it up and moving towards the direction of the row. Okay, moving that back. Oops, I'm out of view of the camera here. Okay, and then put the previous stitch back on. All right, and then of course you just keep going with that one. So once you put that back on, that's the next one that gets wrapped. And you can tell because this one's actually tighter than this one is. This is looser. This is a little tighter because you just pull it back on. So just continue on, and you have done the herringbone stitch. One more. Okay, that was just for fun. Okay, so now that we've shown that, I'm going to turn this loom around, and I've cut my yarn, and then I'm going to actually start you on how to cast on for this. So if you're not familiar with making your yarn go in a counterclockwise position and have all the yarn go at the same time rather than like E-wrapping and then coming back, so we want to end up with it on the right. So go ahead and make your slip knot, put that on, and just throw it on your peg, what you're calling peg 1. Okay. You can do a double E-wrap cast on. So you can do two different ways. Well, there's a few. You can also do a long tail cast on, but these are the easiest ones. So if we want a double E-wrap cast on, we're going to put our slip knot on and then wrap around it and then knit that stitch. And then we're going to double wrap this one and knit over, double wrap this next one and knit over, and however many stitches that you need. So your working yarn is on the right and you've already knitted those all over. Of course, if you did this one, you need to make sure your tail's in the back. Okay, so let's take this off and let's show you the cable cast on. And I do have these cast-ons available in a series. There's a playlist for the Loom library for stitches. For the cable cast on, we're going to make a slip knot and put it on the peg that you want to use. Tighten that up and go ahead and wrap the peg, but this time we're going to pick up the stitch, pulling downward to make a loop. Make sure that that tail is in the back. Okay, so when we make this loop, I'm going to pick it up and flip it, and then take my working yarn and pull it between these two. Okay, now I wouldn't actually like pull it super tight just because it'll be a little too stiff. Go ahead and wrap around again, do the same thing, flip it around, and you can go ahead if you want, move this yarn over and then flip that over. So we have done a cable cast on, and this actually resembles needle cable cast on, so it's really nice and clean cast on. I really like it. It resembles it. If you try and do, there's another cable cast on in I think a couple of patterns, but they produce a very braided front, which is not really true to needles. So that's how I got this cast on that looks just like this. Okay, it's nice and tight. It's not loose at all. And then it gives a nice little finish to this. And then we started the herringbone. Okay, I'm going to cast off on this herringbone. And we are going to use a crochet cast off with just a crochet hook. So if you notice, I was actually experimenting with needles to see the bind off is rather loose if I use a basic bind off. This is just a regular basic bind off, and you see it's just a regular chain edge, but it adds this extra layer here. I did it also with a pearl bind off here, and I like it better, but it's still too stretchy, so we're going to do it with a crochet hook. So grab a crochet hook that's appropriate. This is a 6mm or a 10, a J for American. Leave the working yarn on the left-hand side or the opposite side that you want to put the crochet hook in, and I'm going to pick up the stitches here. Pick up 1 and then 2 stitches. Okay, and then you're just going to work those 2 stitches like that. So knit the back over the front, and go ahead and pick up this stitch here, and then you can turn it and pull the back over the front. So let me see if I can pick this up and make it easier for you. Pull the knitting away, and you can actually pull it in through the back here like this and pick it up off the loom, and then turn your hook downward and pull it through that little teardrop. Okay, so this is going to be a tighter stitch because I'm not adding any extra yarn, so kind of pull it through the back here just to get it up off of your pegs. And if you can see this, let me focus in here. Okay, so just using your crochet hook, if you're not as familiar with using them, you want to take it and turn it, because this stitch is like a teardrop, and you just pull it on through. Okay, all right, let's do another one. And grab this stitch off of here and pull it on through. And if you can't do that, you can just pick it up with your loom pick and your knitting tool and get it on there for you. Oops. Just pull this, sorry about that. Let me just pull this away and show you. Okay, pop that off. There we go. There we go. And pull that through. And just keep working your way down. And you can see it's working up a nice tight stitch here. No extra yarn is involved. And then this last stitch is rather loose because it just got pulled from the working yarn. So we're just going to pull that on and then pull it on through. Cut your yarn, which I already have. Actually, it's pretty long, but it's there. Okay, so you cut it, and then you've got your bind offs. You didn't need any extra stretchiness. It already is stretchy enough, and it has this nice edge onto it. So that is the herringbone stitch and the bind off. All right, well, thank you for tuning in to Good Knit Kisses. I hope you have a great day and happy looming. Bye-bye.